Victor Thorne ducked into the small brick café on the corner of Mercer and Pine, shaking rain off his coat, never guessing the woman offering free samples by the pastry counter would be the one to completely wreck his carefully controlled world. "Try one?" she asked, her voice light, holding out a silver tray with tiny squares of something golden brown and flaky. Her dark curls were pulled into a messy bun, and a streak of flour smudged her cheek. "They're apple caramel tarts. Made them this morning." Victor blinked, caught off guard not only by the scent-warm cinnamon and butter but by her eyes. They were bright, curious, and completely unbothered by the fact that he looked like a drenched Wall Street executive who didn't belong anywhere near this cozy place. He took one, popped it into his mouth, and paused. "Damn." She raised an eyebrow. "That's either really good or really bad." "It's incredible," he admitted, licking a bit of caramel off his thumb. "You made these?" "Yep. From scratch. I'm Zadie Archer. I help run the place." She pointed to the chalkboard menu written in multicolored cursive. "Welcome to Bean and Butter." Victor glanced around. The place was tiny, with mismatched chairs and a bookshelf full of secondhand novels. It was nothing like the sterile, high-end cafes he usually passed on his way to the Thorne Enterprises skyscraper. "You always hand out samples at 9 in the morning?" "Only when I'm trying to win people over," she said with a grin. "You looked like you needed it." He laughed, surprising himself. "That obvious? Most people don't barge in here looking like they just fired someone and got dumped in the same hour." He raised a brow. "I didn't get dumped." "Ah, so just the firing part then." Victor leaned against the counter, intrigued. "You always this nosy? You always this uptight?" She shot back, but her smile softened it. He chuckled again, and for the first time in weeks, the tightness in his chest loosened. "Victor." Her eyes sparkled. "Victor." He hesitated. "Just Victor." Zadie tilted her head like she knew he was holding something back, but didn't push. "All right, just Victor. You want something real to go with that sample?" He nodded, watching her move behind the counter, calling to someone in the kitchen for a cappuccino and a slice of something called brown butter banana loaf. When she handed it to him, he reached for his wallet. "Nope. First-timer special. On the house." Victor opened his mouth to protest, but she was already helping another customer. He sat by the window, sipping his coffee, and watched her work. She laughed easily, remembered people's names, and even helped a little boy tie his shoe. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just real. It was a sharp contrast to his usual world where everyone wanted something from him. Deals, mergers, favors, access. This woman didn't know he was Victor Thorne, billionaire CEO of Thorne Enterprises. And for some reason, he didn't want her to. He came back the next morning, and the next, and the next. By the end of the week, she had his coffee ready without asking and had stopped offering samples. Instead, they talked about books, about old movies, about how she was trying to buy the cafe from the retiring owner but didn't have the money. "You're really trying to buy this place?" he asked one afternoon, stirring honey into his tea. Zadie sighed. "Yeah, it's been my dream since I was 15. I started working here junior year of high school. But Susan's selling it soon, and I've barely scraped together enough to fix the espresso machine, let alone buy the whole place." Victor leaned forward. "Don't you have investors?" Or she laughed. "Investors? This is a two-person cafe, not a startup. Besides, I don't want some rich guy coming in and turning this place into a chain with a fake rustic logo and Bluetooth chairs." He raised his brows. "Bluetooth chairs? You know what I mean." He did. And for the first time, he felt the sting of irony. He was exactly the kind of man she didn't want near her world. That night, he sat in his penthouse overlooking the skyline, untouched steak on a gold-rimmed plate, thinking about Zadie's flour-smudged cheek and the way she called him just Victor like she didn't care about anything else. The next morning, he returned. Rain again. She met him at the counter with a crooked smile and a fresh muffin. "You're early," she said. "I couldn't sleep." You worried I'd stop giving you free muffins? No, he said, watching her carefully. I just like seeing you. Her hand stilled on the counter. She looked up, surprised. You're not joking? No, his voice was quiet, honest. Zadie, I don't do this. I don't show up for anyone. But this place being here with you, it's the only part of my day that doesn't feel hollow. There was a beat of silence. Then she placed the muffin in front of him and said, then keep showing up. He did. Every morning for 2 weeks, then 3. They started walking after her shift, sometimes to the park, sometimes to the bookstore 2 blocks over. He told her about his childhood in Vermont. She told him about her late mother, whose cinnamon roll recipe was still used in the cafe. One night, as they walked past a jazz trio playing on the sidewalk, he took her hand. She didn't pull away. You never told me what you do, she said softly. He exhaled. I run a company. Big? He nodded. Very. She looked at him, eyes searching. And your last name? He met her gaze. Thorne. Her eyes widened. Wait. Thorne? As in, yeah. She let go of his hand. You're Victor Thorne. The Victor Thorne. He nodded slowly. She stared at him, stunned. You let me call you just Victor all this time. I didn't want to be Victor Thorne with you. I just wanted to be someone who made you smile. Her voice was quiet. So you've been lying. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Same thing. He reached for her hand again, but she stepped back. I need time, she said, eyes shining. I don't know if I can trust you. He nodded, his chest aching. I'll wait. And he did. Zadie hadn't expected silence to echo so loudly. The mornings felt hollow without the quiet scrape of Victor pulling out his usual stool or the faint clink of his spoon against the ceramic mug she always set out for him. She hadn't seen him in days, and she hated that she kept glancing up every time the bell over the cafe door jingled, only to find someone else. On the 4th morning, she was wiping down the chalkboard when Susan came out from the kitchen with a newspaper in hand and a furrow between her brows. You didn't tell me you were hanging out with Victor Thorne, she said, holding up the front page of the city business section. Is this the same guy? Zadie froze. There he was, Victor, standing beside a woman in a navy blue pantsuit outside a glass building, his expression unreadable. The headline read, Thorne Enterprises Eyes Local Redevelopment Project. Downtown cafes could be at risk. Zadie felt her stomach twist. He didn't tell me any of that. Susan's voice softened. You all right, honey? I need some air. Outside, the wind had picked up, scattering leaves across the sidewalk. Zadie walked past the bookstore and the florist, her mind racing. She told him everything about her plans, her hopes, how fragile the cafe's future was. And he'd said nothing. Just watched her pour herself into a place he might be planning to bulldoze. She stopped at the corner, staring up at the skyline where the Thorne building loomed like a silent threat. That night, she didn't sleep. She kept picturing his face the day he finally told her his name, how careful he'd been, as if revealing the truth might shatter something. But the real betrayal wasn't his name. It was what he hadn't said after. When she returned to the cafe the next morning, the bell rang 5 minutes before opening. She unlocked the door, expecting a delivery. It was Victor. He looked exhausted. His coat was damp again, hair tousled from the wind. You weren't answering, he said quietly. I didn't have anything to say. I didn't know that article was coming out, he said quickly. I didn't approve the headline. I'm not trying to redevelop your cafe. She crossed her arms. But Thorne Enterprises is. He exhaled. My board has been pushing to buy out several blocks downtown. I didn't connect the dots until I saw the map yesterday. Your cafe is right in the middle of the proposed site. Her voice was flat. That's convenient. Zadie, listen to me. I didn't come to Bean and Butter with any kind of motive. I swear. I didn't even know the board was looking in that area when I first stepped in. She didn't move. And now? I told them to pull the offer. I'm shutting it down. Her eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because I care about what happens to you. His voice cracked slightly. I don't want to be the reason you lose something you fought for. She stared at him, uncertain. You think it's that simple? That you can just stop a redevelopment project and everything's fine? No, he said. I think it's complicated. But I also think I'd rather fight my board than lose you. She blinked, caught off guard. Lose me? He stepped closer. I've spent my entire life building things that look good from the outside. But they're empty. This place you made something real. And I wanted to be inside that world even if I didn't deserve it. Zadie studied him, searching for cracks in his polished exterior. There were shadows under his eyes now, the kind that didn't come from sleepless nights alone, but from the weight of something deeper. She recognized that weight. You really pulled the offer? She asked. I did, he said. And my board's furious. But I don't care. And what about you? She asked, voice softening. What do you want? He hesitated. I want to help you buy the cafe. She shook her head. No. Absolutely not. That's not what this is about. I'm not offering charity, he said quickly. I'm offering a partnership. Silent. No strings. You run it. You keep full control. I want to invest in what you've built because it matters, not because I want anything back. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to trust me, he said. Eventually. Her jaw tightened. I don't know if I can. I'll wait, he said again, voice steady. She turned away, overwhelmed. I need time. His voice was quiet behind her. Take it. He left without asking for anything more. That evening, Zadie sat in the back office, going through her numbers again. The numbers hadn't changed. The espresso machine still needed replacing. The lease was still up in 4 months. The bank still wouldn't give her another extension. But she'd changed. She remembered the way Victor had looked at the boy who spilled cocoa on his shirt without blinking. How he'd stayed late helping her carry in a broken shelf even though he'd been wearing tailored slacks and expensive shoes. He hadn't flinched at the mess. He just rolled up his sleeves. She didn't sleep that night either, but not because she was angry. The next morning, she arrived early. Before the sun rose, before the first customer wandered in. She unlocked the front door and flipped the sign to open, not expecting anything. But at exactly 7, the bell rang. Victor stood there holding a box. Bagels, he said. From that place you mentioned uptown. Thought you might be hungry. She didn't say anything. Just took the box and walked behind the counter. He hesitated, then stepped forward. You don't have to talk. I just wanted to be here. She poured 2 coffees without asking. After a long silence, she looked at him and said, If I take your money, you're going to keep your name off everything. I mean it. No plaques. No press. Done. And if you ever try to change a single thing about this place, I won't. And if you bail, I won't. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. All right. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But, she added, you're working the register this weekend. We're short-staffed. Victor blinked. I don't know how to work a register. Guess you'll learn, she said, allowing a flicker of something through her voice that almost resembled a smile. Victor stared at the worn wooden counter like it was a boardroom table about to humiliate him. This thing doesn't even have a screen, he muttered, jabbing at the antique register's brass keys. Zadie leaned an elbow on the pastry case, watching him with her arms crossed. That's because it's not a touchscreen. It's older than you. Press the total key, not the one labeled tax. And stop looking at it like it's going to bite. He glanced at the customer waiting patiently with a blueberry scone. Apologies. I'm still in training. The woman chuckled. Just don't charge me $500 for a pastry. Victor managed a strained laugh and handed over the change. No guarantees. Zadie waited until the customer left before walking over. You're pressing too hard. It's not a vault, you're not cracking it. I've never worked a register before. You've also never swept a floor, folded napkins, or stacked mugs. And yet here you are. Victor looked at his hands. I haven't done anything by hand in years. It's strange. She shrugged. You'll get used to it. Maybe. By mid-morning, he was sweating under his button-down. Someone had spilled almond milk on a stool, the espresso machine had jammed mid-drip, and a toddler had nearly taken out a tray of croissants with a rogue balloon. Victor had handled corporate buyouts in 3 countries without blinking, but this was chaos in a ceramic mug. And yet, he didn't leave. He stayed through the lunch rush, fumbling through sandwich wrappers and mislabeling 2 orders. Zadie didn't yell. She didn't praise him either. But her mouth twitched once when he remembered to offer someone oat milk without being told. Later, when the cafe was empty and the music had dropped to a gentle hum, she handed him a dishcloth. "You missed a spot on the counter. You're relentless. Only because you're sloppy." He took the cloth and wiped the counter in silence. Then, without looking up, he said, "You never told me what your mom was like." Zadie's hand paused on the lid of the cookie jar. "Why?" "Because I want to know." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "She was stubborn, thought she could fix anything with cinnamon and sarcasm. She worked 3 jobs when I was little but never let me see her cry. She made people feel seen." He nodded. "Sounds familiar." She gave him a look. "Don't do that. Don't turn me into some sanitized version of her. I'm not. I wasn't. She died in the back garden. Stroke. I made her tea that morning and didn't know it would be the last time. I was 19. Victor didn't speak, just folded the dishcloth slowly. I took over her shift here the next day," Zadie went on. "Didn't even ask. I just showed up. Susan didn't stop me." He leaned back against the counter. "That's the day you decided to buy this place." She nodded. "I couldn't save her. But I could save this." Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then he said, "I've never lost anyone." Zadie's brows lifted. "Must be nice." He looked down at his hands. "It's not. It's isolating. My parents are alive, but I haven't spoken to my father in over a year. And I see my mother at charity galas, where she introduces me to women with Ivy League surnames." Zadie leaned on the counter. "Sounds exhausting." "It is." She tilted her head. "Why haven't you walked away from that world?" "Because I built it. And I thought if I built it big enough, loud enough, I wouldn't feel how empty it was." Zadie's voice softened. "Do you still feel empty?" He met her eyes. "Not when I'm here." The bell over the door jingled. Zadie turned just as Susan stepped in, waving a folder. "Lease paperwork," she said. "You ready?" Zadie took it with steady hands. "Yeah, I am." Victor stepped back, letting her flip through the pages. Susan pulled out a pen, but Zadie hesitated. "What is it?" Victor asked. She turned to him. "I'm not signing this unless you agree to one thing." He raised an eyebrow. "I thought we already negotiated." "Not this part. No secret ownership. No shell companies. I'm putting your name on the investor clause. Small print, but real. If you're going to believe in what I built, then you don't get to hide." He stared at her, surprised. She held out the pen. "You in or not?" He took it. "I'm in." Susan smiled. "Well, then, let's make it official." They signed. Later that evening, after the cafe had closed and the lights were dimmed, Victor stood by the window watching the street lamps flicker on. Zadie handed him a steaming mug. "Chamomile?" he asked. "Figured you needed something calming after your register meltdown." He took a sip. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Not a chance." He laughed quietly. Then, after a pause, said, "I've never done anything like this before." "I know. I don't know where it's going." "Neither do I." He looked at her. "But you're still here." She leaned against the window with him. "So are you." Victor reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. Victor adjusted the sleeves of his hoodie, a gift from Zadie, who had tossed it at him one early morning with a muttered, "Stop dressing like a spreadsheet." He'd worn it ever since. The fabric was soft from too many washes and still carried a faint scent of vanilla and roasted coffee beans. He stood behind the counter of bean and butter, watching Zadie scribble something on the back of a takeout bag with a red Sharpie. "You're labeling the muffins now?" he asked. "It's not a label. It's a quote," she said without looking up. "I put a different one every day. Yesterday's was from Maya Angelou. Today's is Sylvia Plath." He leaned in to read. "I took a deep breath and listened to the old brag of my heart. I am. Zadie capped the Sharpie. "Someone out there needs to read that today." You always do this? I started when I was 16. I thought if I couldn't afford a real marketing campaign, I could at least give people something they'd remember. Victor smiled but said nothing. He didn't need to. She was radiant in her own rhythm. As the morning rush spilled in, Victor moved between tasks with more ease. He still fumbled occasionally, once handing a regular his cappuccino in a to-go cup instead of the chipped mug he liked, but Zadie only lifted one eyebrow and kept going. The customers had grown used to seeing him there, some still raising their brows in surprise, others treating him like any other cafe worker. He liked it that way. Later that afternoon, Zadie pulled out a worn notebook from beneath the counter and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "My mother's recipe book. I've been rewriting it. I want to make copies, bind them, maybe sell them during the holidays." He flipped through the pages. Her handwriting slanted slightly to the left, and small notes decorated the margins. Some pages were stained with butter or cocoa powder. "This is incredible," he said. "I want to do it right." The kind of thing people keep on their kitchen shelves for decades. You could get a publisher. I don't want someone else deciding what gets edited out. I'd rather do a small run myself and keep it honest. Victor closed the notebook gently. "I can help." "I know," she said simply. It struck him how natural they'd become. No performance. No calculation. Just two people standing shoulder to shoulder, building something together. That evening, after locking up, Zadie pulled him toward the back garden behind the cafe. The space was modest. A string of Edison bulbs hung across the fence, and a few wooden benches lined the brick wall, but someone had left a record player on a crate, and soft jazz floated through the air. Victor frowned. "You've been hiding this from me. I didn't want to share it until it felt right." He turned toward her. "And now?" She shrugged. "Now it does." She reached for his hand and placed it on her waist. "Dance with me. Here. There's no one watching." He hesitated only a second before drawing her closer. They moved slowly, the late autumn air cool against their skin, the music wrapping around them like a secret. Zadie's cheek rested against his chest. "I used to come back here after late shifts. Just sit and breathe. It's the only place I ever really let myself feel things." He didn't respond with words. Instead, he held her tighter. When the song ended, she stepped back and looked up at him. "I know you didn't come here looking for this." "No," he agreed. "I came in for coffee." She smiled. And found the only thing in years that feels like home." She looked down. "I don't want to pretend this is simple. It's not. I don't want you to give up your world for me. I'm not," he said. "I'm choosing to build a new one with you in it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached up and touched the collar of his hoodie. "You still wear this?" He nodded. "Because it smells like you. You're ridiculous. Only when I'm in love." Her breath caught faintly, but she didn't look away. "Say that again." "I'm in love with you," he said, clear and without hesitation. "I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But I am." Zadie's voice was quiet. "You scared me. I know. You still do. I'll earn it. Every day." She kissed him, then soft, tentative, but sure. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "I'm scared too," he whispered. "We'll figure it out." He nodded. Together. The following week brought a blur of motion. Victor hired a small team from one of his lesser-known subsidiaries to help Zadie publish her mother's recipes. Not under Thorn Enterprises, but as a private, quiet project. The first proof arrived in a brown envelope. Zadie opened it with shaking hands. The cover was simple. Navy fabric, stitched title in cursive. Inside, her mother's voice lived on in flour, sugar, and handwritten notes. They celebrated with cider in the back garden. She handed him the first finished copy. "You should keep it," he said. She shook her head. "No, you were part of this. You believed in it when I couldn't." He tucked it under his arm. "Then I'll keep it where I can see it." A few days later, she found it on the top shelf of the cafe, next to the register, beneath a tiny brass plaque. She rolled her eyes. Victor, it doesn't say my name, he said quickly. It says, for the heart behind the counter. That's all. She studied him. You really don't miss your old life? I don't miss being known for things that never mattered. And now I'm known for muffins and miscalculating change. And for slipping into a local café, she said, and letting a stranger ruin your perfectly structured world. Best mistake I ever made. She leaned in. You're not getting out of working Saturdays. I'd never try. Zadie laughed, and the sound wrapped around him like the first sunlight after a long winter. He kissed her then deeply, certain not of what came next, but of who he was with. She tasted like cinnamon and hope. The bell above the cafe door rang, and Zadie turned toward the sound, then glanced back at him with a smile that didn't need words. He stepped behind the counter, pulled on his apron, and took his place beside her, where he belonged. A year later, the sidewalk outside Bean and Butter had been redone with cobblestone, and the little garden in the back now boasted a hand-built pergola wrapped in climbing jasmine. The cafe had expanded slightly, claiming the vacant shop next door and turning it into a cozy reading nook. The layout was still modest, the charm still intact, but everything felt deeper rooted. Victor stood by the door, adjusting the tie Zadie had insisted he wear. It wasn't his usual sleek black, it was navy with tiny golden stars he claimed clashed with his suit. She'd grinned and handed it to him anyway. You look like someone who knows what he's doing, she said as she pinned a boutonniere to his lapel. I'm terrified, he replied. Good. You should be. Inside, the tables had been rearranged into long banquet rows draped in white linens and dotted with mismatched vintage teacups holding wildflowers. The scent of lavender, lemon cake, and fresh coffee filled the air. The cafe was closed to the public, but full of people, friends, neighbors, a few of Victor's colleagues who had traded their sharp suits for linen shirts and rolled-up sleeves. Zadie's hand slipped into his. Her dress wasn't traditional, it was a soft cream with embroidered vines along the hem, and her hair was pulled back with a comb that had belonged to her mother. She looked exactly like the version of herself he'd fallen for, grounded, radiant, and absolutely certain. The ceremony took place in the back garden, under the vines. Susan officiated. It had been her idea. No one else knows both of you like I do, she'd said, waving off Victor's suggestion to hire someone official. Besides, I've got a great voice for drama. When it came time to speak, Victor didn't hesitate. I thought I knew what love was, he said, eyes locked on Zadie's. I thought it was about certainty, about matching resumes and reputations. But then I walked into a cafe I'd passed 100 times, and you handed me a piece of your world without asking who I was. You saw a man, not a name. And I've spent every day since trying to deserve that. Zadie's voice was steady as she replied. I never planned on you. You were the storm that blew the windows open when I needed them to stay shut. But then you stayed. You worked the register. You spilled almond milk. You listened. And you never once tried to change me. You just kept showing up. That's love, Victor. That's what you gave me. He kissed her before Susan could even finish the final sentence, and the applause that followed was thunderous. The reception unfolded as the sun began to dip. Victor's cousin played acoustic guitar in the corner. Someone passed around slices of cinnamon cake, the recipe written in Zadie's mother's handwriting, and Susan made a toast that had everyone laughing through tears. Later, in the quiet lull after the music faded and the last of the guests had wandered out onto the sidewalk, Zadie and Victor sat together on the back bench beneath the pergola. You know, she said, resting her head on his shoulder, I always thought I'd feel different on a day like this. Do you? No. I just feel. Right? Victor laced his fingers with hers. That's enough for me. She turned to look at him. You ever miss the high rises? Sometimes. But not the board meetings. Even with all the power? I have more power here, he said. Every time you let me kiss you, I win more than I ever did in those towers. Zadie laughed. That's a terrible line. It worked, didn't it? She pulled him to his feet. Come on. There's one last dance left in us. They danced barefoot in the garden, the night air thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of distant traffic. There were no photographers, no spotlight, just two people who had found something rare and real and fought to keep it. When they went inside, Victor locked the door behind them, the key now worn from use. He turned the cafe lights off, one by one, until only the warm glow above the pastry case remained. Zadie leaned against the counter. "You realize you're still on the schedule for Saturday brunch. I wouldn't miss it, even when we're old?" He walked toward her, slid his hands around her waist. "Especially then." A year passed. Then, too, the cafe flourished. The recipe book sold out twice and was reprinted with a foreword by Zadie dedicated to her mother and to someone she called the man who brought the thunder and stayed for the rain. Victor never asked to read it before it went to print. He didn't need to. They traveled, occasionally short trips when the cafe allowed. Florence, Kyoto, a farmhouse in Ireland where Victor learned to bake soda bread and Zadie fell in love with sheep she couldn't bring home. But they always returned to bean and butter. Their place. Their beginning. Victor never returned to Thorne Enterprises. He sold his shares quietly and invested in small businesses across the city, always anonymously. He never wanted to be the name on the building again. Only the hand behind the curtain helping someone else's dream take shape. And every morning he woke up beside Zadie in the small apartment above the cafe, kissed her shoulder, and walked downstairs to start the coffee. Because love, he'd learned, wasn't about the empire you built. It was about who you built it with.